The IS curve shows real interest in relation to output such that the goods market is in equilibrium. Equilibrium occurs when aggregate expenditure is equal to real GDP, or AE is equal to Y, or the sum of consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports. AE equals C plus I plus G plus NX. Equilibrium is determined by inventory changes, which is included as a part of investment spending. Investment in this model can be planned or unplanned, and actual investment is equal to planned investment only when there is no unplanned change in inventory. So the goods market is in equilibrium only when inventories are unchanged, and changes in inventory causes changes in GDP and employment. When analyzing planned expenditure, there is an assumption being made that all factors except consumption are held constant, so consumption is measured relative to GDP. In this case, consumption depends on disposable income. We can measure the marginal propensity to consume as the amount by which consumption changes when disposable income changes, or MPC is equal to delta C over delta YD. The consumption function is now measured as the sum of autonomous consumption and current income, which is the product of the marginal propensity to consume and GDP. With this information, let's change our EE function to reflect these assumptions. Aggregate expenditure now equals consumption function, the consumption function, plus investment, plus government spending plus net exports, where investment, government spending, and net exports are held constant. We can now plot a line with a slope of 1, or at a 45-degree angle, which can visually show us the point of equilibrium in the goods market. Where this line crosses the AE line, planned expenditure is equal to outcome, and equilibrium is achieved, or AE is equal to Y. When equilibrium is not achieved, there's either an excess inventory, such as in this case, where we have Y1, or there is a shortage in inventory, such as in this case, Y2. In both these cases, there's a change in inventory, and therefore we are not in equilibrium. So what can we do to change this? In this scenario, GDP will have to shift, or outcome will have to shift. So in the case of excess inventories, we'll need to decrease GDP. And in the inverse case, where we have a shortage of inventory, we will have to increase our production. The IS curve shifts as a result of changes in the factors affecting aggregate expenditure other than the real interest rate. These are referred to as demand shocks, which can be positive or negative. A positive demand shock will shift the AE curve up, causing equilibrium GDP to increase, and therefore that will be reflected in the IS curve, which will shift to the right, as you can see here. Conversely, a negative demand shock will have an inverse effect, so it will have the opposite effect. So it will push the AE curve down, which will decrease the output. You can see that's shifting to the left, or it's going. We're decreasing our output here. And this will be reflected again in the IS curve, which will shift to the left, and similarly will experience a decrease in output. Let's say that there was an increase in exports, which causes a positive demand shock. The AE curve will shift up, which will cause the equilibrium GDP to increase. So we go from Y1 to Y2, and this will be reflected again in the IS curve. So the IS curve will shift to the right, and again we will see that increase in GDP from Y1 to Y2 there. As you can see, the real interest rate remains constant, and equilibrium is maintained in the AE model. So at both points we're producing at a level in which expenditure is equal to outcome, right? In both cases, therefore, real GDP is equal to the potential, and there is no output gap.